There is a strange hum beneath the noise of modern life, a vibration not heard with the ears but felt in the marrow. You've likely sensed it, subtle, yet ever-present, woven through architecture, advertisements, education systems, media feeds, even the cities we walk through daily. It's not coincidence, it's not aesthetic, it is design, intentional, mathematical, ancient. This is not a tale of paranoia, nor a descent into idle speculation. This is the unveiling of a lattice so precise and omnipresent that, once seen, it cannot be unseen. It is called sacred geometry, a term that may evoke symbols on temple walls or New Age bookshelves, but it is more than art and far more than spiritual token. Sacred geometry is the hidden operating system of the reality you were taught to navigate, a language of divine architecture used both to awaken and, paradoxically, to enslave. From the earliest ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the towering cathedrals of Europe and the silently humming microchips of the digital age, geometry has always been used not just to shape space, but to mold consciousness. These patterns, spirals, hexagons, Vesica Piscis, the golden ratio, aren't mere decorations. They are frequency locks, algorithms of form, glyphs that interface directly with the subconscious mind. When arranged with intent, they can open portals to higher knowing, or cage the soul in a hypnotic loop of limitation. We are born into a womb of symbols, gestated within invisible cages of meaning. Look around. The logo on your coffee cup, the triangular peak of a credit card chip, the spiraling staircases that wind upward in government buildings and corporate headquarters, the layout of your city's downtown core, all reflect geometry. But is it sacred in its origin, or has it been corrupted by a priesthood of power, a technocratic elite who understand its true purpose? To understand this, we must go back not just historically, but inwardly. Sacred geometry was once a map to the divine, a bridge between form and formlessness. The ancients believed that by tracing these patterns in sand, stone, or ink, one could replicate the blueprint of the cosmos. The circle represented unity, the triangle, ascent, the spiral, evolution. These forms did not merely depict spiritual truths, they summoned them. They vibrated with cosmic intent. To study them was to meditate. To construct with them was to pray. But somewhere along the timeline of humanity, the reverent was replaced by the manipulative. What was once a key to higher awareness became a mechanism of control. Those who learned the language of shape and proportion did not always use it for healing or awakening. Some used it to encode obedience, to orchestrate illusion, to hijack perception itself. Picture a symphony where every instrument is in tune, but the conductor plays a melody of distortion. That is the world we live in. The frequencies are real. The geometry is true, but the music has been redirected. Geometry still governs our structures, our buildings, our networks, our cultural icons, but it often leads not toward transcendence, but toward artificiality, toward predictability, toward mental domestication. And we walk through this symphony like sleepwalkers, mistaking hypnotic design for neutral reality. We marvel at the sleek curves of a phone, the clean lines of an app, unaware that the very shapes are crafted to trigger primal responses, tribal affirmations, addictive loops. Behind every interface is geometry, and behind the geometry is intent. Yet, this is not a cry of despair, it is a call to remembrance. For if the same patterns can imprison the mind, they can also set it free. What has been weaponized can be reclaimed. What has been inverted can be turned upright again. This journey begins not with rebellion, but with seeing, with peeling back the ornate veil of modern life and gazing directly at the scaffold beneath. A scaffold built not of steel or concrete, but of spirals, ratios, and angles that whisper to the subconscious mind. You are not just a body navigating a city, you are a soul navigating a maze of meaning, encoded by those who understand the ancient laws of perception. In this exploration, we will not merely theorize, we will feel, we will remember. We will descend into the underlayers of symbols and rise again, not as consumers of culture, but as creators of consciousness. The sacred has been used to enslave the sacred within you, but geometry, like truth, is a mirror. It reflects the heart of the one who wields it. Let us begin not with suspicion, but with curiosity. What if everything you were taught to see as benign was designed to nudge your thoughts just slightly off course? What if every familiar symbol was a breadcrumb on a trail leading not to freedom, but to complacency? And most importantly, what if you could break the pattern? To pierce the veil of sacred geometry's influence is to stand at the threshold of form and meaning, where architecture becomes ideology and shape becomes spell. Geometry is not merely about angles and measurements. It is the language of structure itself, a set of visual mantras that bypass logic and root themselves deep in the subconscious. And in this silent language, the core themes of control are whispered, not spoken, into the blueprint of our lives. At the heart of this web lies the illusion of permanence. Straight lines, perfect circles, symmetrical grids, these are the icons of stability, of civilization, of predictability. They give us cities that are efficient, devices that are intuitive, and symbols that feel ancient and true. But beneath their polished surfaces is a seduction, the promise that everything has been figured out for you, mapped and refined. The illusion comforts while it cages. The human mind is naturally wired to respond to harmony. When it encounters patterns that mirror the sacred, the Fibonacci spiral, the golden mean, the tetrahedron, it feels a quiet recognition, a homecoming. The soul knows these shapes. It encountered them in the swirl of galaxies, in the spiral of DNA, in the fluid bloom of a sunflower. And yet this very resonance is why these patterns, when misused, are so potent. What is more dangerous than a weapon disguised as truth? The manipulators of perception, the architects of mass belief, have not merely stumbled upon geometry's power. They have studied it, refined it, codified it. Entire institutions exist whose silent mandate is the management of mass consciousness through symbol. Their aim is not enlightenment, it is predictability. Control is most effective when it masquerades as beauty. We must look closely, not just at what is shown, but how it is shown. Think of logos, the modern glyphs of allegiance. They are not randomly designed. Most major corporate symbols contain forms rooted in sacred geometry, overlapping circles forming the Vesica Piscis, triangular symmetries echoing pyramidal power, spirals that subtly direct the gaze inward or outward. These designs aren't accidental. They're crafted to evoke trust or loyalty, bypassing critical thought and entering the emotional body directly. Zoom out to the cityscape. The aerial view of a metropolis mirrors mandalas, grids, or sigils. Roads intersect at perfect right angles. Monumental buildings are laid out with cardinal precision. Obelisks, domes, and circular plazas aren't aesthetic flourishes, they are resonance chambers. They organize not just traffic, but thought. The structure you inhabit structures you in return. You don't merely walk through a city, you participate in its geometry, you embody it, and there lies the core of this great mechanism, resonance and entrainment. Just as tuning forks vibrate in harmony when brought close together, human consciousness begins to mirror the forms and frequencies around it. This is the principle of entrainment. If the structure around you hums with sacred geometry distorted by intention, your own energetic field begins to adapt. The more time you spend within artificial harmony, the more you internalize it. You begin to think in straight lines. You begin to move in pre-programmed loops. Creativity flattens. Intuition dims. You are geometrically entrained, yet all of this rests upon one unspoken law of reality: belief shapes perception, and perception shapes reality. The symbols you accept as truth become the prison bars of your mind. You don't need a cage if the inmate forgets what freedom felt like. The most insidious aspect of this geometrical control is that it doesn't feel oppressive. It feels elegant, clean, efficient. The geometric mind doesn't shout commands. It whispers options, nudges behavior, offers you a polished menu where freedom is simulated but never truly offered. It doesn't forbid chaos, it simply surrounds you with so much structured order that chaos becomes unthinkable. But let's not forget, sacred geometry is not the enemy. It is a neutral force, a primal language of the universe. Like fire, it can warm or burn. Like a key, it can lock or unlock. The problem arises not from geometry itself, but from how it has been filtered through intention. A spiral in nature is a song. A spiral in a manipulated ad campaign is a siren. One invites you into awareness, the other drags you into compulsion. This is why awakening from the geometric hypnosis begins not with resistance, but with discernment, with noticing, with becoming aware of the ratio behind the smile, the symmetry behind the brand, the grid behind your daily routine. Awareness is the solvent. When you can see the pattern, you are no longer caught in it. You become the observer, and in observing, you reclaim authorship. And then a strange alchemy begins. The same patterns that once confined you begin to unfold their higher meaning. You realize that you, too, are geometrica living, breathing fractal of the cosmos. You are not here to resist structure, but to embody it consciously, to choose what you resonate with, to move from being a passive recipient of geometry to a conscious sculptor of it. Geometry is a mirror. If you approach it as a disciple of truth, it reflects wisdom. If you approach it as a tool of control, it reflects power. The question is, whose intention is behind the form? Let us now descend from abstraction into the territory where geometry breathes, where symbols speak in stories rather than equations, and where hidden meanings emerge not through logic but through archetype and myth. For even the sharpest angle and the most elegant spiral are at their root stories, ancient ones, encoded into space and time, wrapped in form, and placed like seeds into the garden of human consciousness. Imagine this: a child born in a circular temple, its walls etched with spirals, stars, and sacred arcs. The child grows up under the dome of this geometry, surrounded by a harmony so perfect it vibrates into their dreams. They learn not through words but through resonance. They gaze at the mandalas carved into stone and feel their own soul awaken, echoing back the pattern. In that world, sacred geometry is not control, it is remembrance. Every angle points toward the divine. Every shape is a doorway. Every spiral is a stairwell inward. But now imagine that same child transported not physically, but perceptually into another temple. This one, too, is adorned with symbols. But here, the intention has shifted. The patterns are still sacred, but they've been subtly rearranged. The golden ratio is slightly off. The triangle has been inverted. The circle is closed, but not whole. These forms still vibrate, but the music is different, dissonant, cold, mechanical. In this new geometry, the child does not remember who they are. They are taught to look outward, not inward, to consume rather than contemplate, to obey the shapes rather than hear their song. This is the story of us, a myth not written in books, but in the very buildings we enter, the screens we scroll, the symbols we unconsciously revere. We are that child, walking through a world of spells disguised as design. Geometry no longer lifts us into the heavens. It locks us into systems. And yet, there are still whispers of the original song, in the curves of ancient labyrinths, in the crystalline forms of snowflakes, in the spirals of galaxies overhead and the unfurling fern at our feet. These are reminders, cracks in the illusion, fractal echoes of a geometry that liberates rather than confines. Consider the story of the labyrinthine shape, both sacred and imprisoning. In myth, the labyrinth holds the Minotaur at its center, a creature, half man, half beast, representing the primal, unintegrated self. The hero enters the labyrinth not to escape it, but to face what lies at its core. This is the paradox of sacred geometry. It draws you in, but depending on the intention behind it, It will either awaken you to your true nature or bind you to a cycle of forgetting. Now think of the pyramid, perhaps the most enigmatic and misused of all symbols. In its essence, the pyramid is a spiritual metaphor. Wide base, rooted in the material, narrowing toward a single apex of unity. It is a mountain made by man, a striving toward the heavens. But in the hands of empire, the pyramid becomes something else. A hierarchy, a system of power, a shape where the many support the few, and the few bask in the illusion of godhood. The same shape used either to ascend into higher knowing, or to press down the masses with crushing force. This dual nature exists within all sacred symbols. The circle can be a womb or a wheel. The spiral can uplift or disorient. The grid can bring clarity or control. The key lies in who writes the story, and how deeply they understand the resonance of the shape. There is another tale, less famous, but whispered through esoteric traditions across the globe. It is the story of the architect and the mirror. In this tale, the architect wishes to build a city that will reflect the divine. So he studies the stars, the flowers, the bones of animals, and the patterns in sound. He draws circles, squares, golden rectangles. He embeds the rhythms of nature into stone and street, and the city blooms, beautiful, alive, awake. But over generations, something changes. The mirror city becomes a model, then a formula, then a system. Future builders no longer look at the stars, they look at the old blueprints. They follow the sacred measurements, but forget the sacred intention. The city becomes efficient, predictable, controlled, and the mirror, it no longer reflects the divine, it reflects the system itself. This story is a mirror of our own civilization. Geometry became code, and code became cage. But the deeper lesson is still alive. We are the architects. We are not meant to live inside someone else's blueprint. We are here to remember the shapes that set us free, and to use them to create anew. When you dream, your mind speaks in symbols. When you meditate, your breath forms a spiral. When you create art, you reach for balance and symmetry without even thinking. These impulses are not accidents. They are the soul remembering its language. The sacred geometry of liberation is already within you. It has only been drowned out by louder songs, artificial harmonies that ask you to forget your center. To break free is to remember how to see again, not with the eyes, but with the inner vision. To see not just what a shape looks like, but what it means. Not just what it does, but what it invokes. A triangle on a screen can be a play button, or a pointer toward enlightenment. A circle can be a logo or a symbol of wholeness. The geometry hasn't changed. You have, and when you reclaim your symbolic literacy, the world becomes transparent again. The spell weakens, the prison dissolves. You begin to walk through cities as if through living mandalas, seeing the distortion and the harmony alike. You start to choose what you align with, what you build, what you believe. You become the weaver, not the web. And now we stand on the threshold where symbol meets soilware. The cosmic becomes practical. For no truth, no matter how transcendent, holds power if it cannot live in our breath, our steps, our choices. What good is the spiral of galaxies if we cannot feel it in the rhythm of our days? What use is the golden ratio if it cannot be restored to the way we shape our homes, our thoughts, our relationships? To integrate the hidden mechanisms of sacred geometry into our waking lives is not merely a matter of rejecting the systems that surround us. It is the deeper, more revolutionary act of re-seeing them. Geometry is all around, woven into our architecture, media, technology, and even language. But the moment you begin to look not through it, but into it, you shift from participant to creator. You shift from being geometrically influenced to becoming geometrically aligned. Begin with awareness. The seemingly inert objects around you, your phone, your kitchen layout, your workplace, even your calendar carry structural codes. Most of us live in rooms shaped like boxes. We stare at screens filled with grids and icons, organized in neat rows and geometric containers. We move through streets laid out like circuit boards. Every day, without noticing, our eyes and minds submit to artificial alignment. Our behavior adapts. We schedule in blocks, we scroll in lines, we think in compartments. But if we turn our gaze ever so slightly, if we begin to question why we feel most alive in nature, why our breath deepens under a canopy of trees, why awe rises when we walk into a circular cathedral or gaze into a spiral seashell, we begin to see the dissonance. The natural world thrives in curves, waves, organic flows. Nothing in a forest moves in right angles. Nothing in your body forms a perfect square. Life, in its fullness, is irregular, fractal, dynamic. And so, to restore harmony within, we must invite that same geometry into our living. This is not a call to abandon technology or demolish cities. It is an invitation to redesign your inner and outer landscapes with intention. Start with your space. Notice what surrounds you. Add circles, spirals, and natural forms to your environment. Through art, through arrangement, through small sacred spaces. Choose colors and shapes that evoke calm, creativity, and resonance. Even subtle changes can rewire perception, slow down the racing mind, and open portals to deeper awareness. But beyond the external, sacred geometry can and must reshape your internal structure. Your thoughts, after all, have form. They spiral, they loop, they branch. Begin to pay attention to the shape of your thinking. Do your ideas run in rigid lines, always reaching forward but never inward? Do your worries spin in repetitive cycles, like broken spirals with no center? Or are your insights fractally treading deeper into self-revelation, each a microcosm of a greater truth? Meditation becomes a potent key here, not as escape, but as a geometric act. When you breathe consciously, you return to rhythm. When you visualize sacred shapes, circles of light, spirals of energy, radiant mandalas, you are retraining your mind to dwell in harmony. These aren't fantasies, they're recalibrations. They work precisely because the mind understands form more deeply than it understands words. It is through these archetypal shapes that we access states of coherence, of alignment with the greater cosmic intelligence. Sacred movement practices, like Qigong, Tai Chi, or certain forms of dance also reawaken the body's memory of geometry. Each gesture traces invisible lines through space. Each pose aligns internal energies with cosmic rhythms. These practices don't just exercise muscle, they carve sacred pathways into the nervous system, clearing the debris left by the architecture of control. Even communication becomes geometry when spoken with awareness. The words we choose, the tone we use, the rhythm of our speech all form patterns in the listener's mind. Stories, when told well, spiral inward to a truth and outward to a transformation. Conversations that circle a topic without fear, rather than attacking in straight lines, allow understanding to unfold rather than be forced. Sacred dialogue is a geometry of the heart. And then there's the deeper integration, relationships. The geometry of love is not linear. It is not transactional. It is not designed around rules and roles alone. True connection spirals, beginning with the self, then outward to another, then upward into the transcendent. The moment we try to box love into fixed expectations, it collapses under its own falseness. But when we let it flow in sacred rhythm, trusting the cycles, the expansions, the contractions, it becomes a living mandala, always new, always evolving. Finally, the implications of this awakening stretch far beyond the personal. As more individuals begin to deprogram from imposed geometry and return to conscious structure, systems will change. Cities can be redesigned to reflect harmony, not hierarchy. Education can be reshaped to mirror natural curiosity and fractal learning. Even governance, when rooted in the geometry of balance and interconnection rather than the pyramid of power, can evolve into something life-giving rather than flattening. It all begins with the subtle reclaiming of perception, the small acts, placing a spiral shell on your altar, tracing a mandala in your journal, breathing in the pattern of the 4 directions before you speak. These aren't eccentric habits, they are revolutionary acts. In them, you declare, I will no longer be unconsciously formed by systems. I will choose my resonance. Geometry is everywhere, but so is consciousness. And when the latter awakens, the former becomes a tool, not a trap. The mind, once shaped by someone else's design, begins to reshape itself. A single act of intentional perception, one true recognition of pattern can fracture centuries of subtle manipulation. That is the power you carry. And so we arrive not at the end, but at the return. For in the spiral of transformation, the end is simply the beginning seen from a higher turn. You have walked with me through forms and frequencies, symbols and systems, distortions and revelations. You have traced the invisible lines that wind through history, through architecture, through thought itself. And now, you stand at the edge of an ancient realization. The geometry that shapes your mind is not fixed. It is fluid, alive, and above all years to reclaim. The illusion was always rooted not just in the shapes themselves, but in the unconscious submission to them. You were never meant to be a passive participant in a world built from someone else's compass. The moment you awaken to the patterns truly see them, you are no longer their subject. You become their mirror, their challenger, their rebuilder. You are not here to simply walk the labyrinth. You are here to redesign it. Remember this, sacred geometry was never the enemy. It is the misuse, the inversion, the weaponization of resonance that we must break free from. The same spiral that pulls you into distraction can also carry you home. The same grid that boxes your attention can become a lattice of intention. The same triangle that forms a power hierarchy can, when upright and balanced, become a symbol of divine integration, mind, body, and spirit united. The transformation begins with vision, yes, but it does not end there. It asks for embodiment. It asks for courage. It asks for you to build. The control structures you have seen, those formed in media, politics, design, even religion, do not endure by strength alone. They endure because too many believe they are the only way to structure reality. But that belief is crumbling, and in its place, new shapes must rise. Not shapes of control, but of coherence. You must become the architect of your own world. Build your mind like a temple. Let your thoughts be pillars of truth and compassion. Let your imagination be the oculus that opens to the sky. Design your routines as living mandalas, woven from rhythm and grace. Cultivate your relationships as sacred geometry in motion, each encounter a point of connection, each moment a line between presence and love. And when the world tempts you back into the grid, when your screen blinks with algorithms, when your job demands straight-line obedience, when your society whispers that conformity is safety, pause, return to the breath, feel its spiral within you. Re-anchor yourself in that ancient pattern, the one that cannot be bought or branded, the one that is encoded in starlight and fingertips alike. This awakening does not demand isolation, it demands integration. You are not here to escape the world, you are here to reweave it, one act of conscious design at a time, one spoken word shaped like a circle of kindness, one decision curved toward growth instead of fear, one home arranged not for efficiency, but for soul. You are more than a mind influenced by geometry. You are geometry made conscious. You are the golden ratio remembering its own divinity. You are the spiral that knows it's not lost its ascending. And so I call you softly, insistently, unmistakably to action. Not the loud action of rebellion, but the sacred action of realignment. Begin to see the unseen. Begin to shape the unshaped. Walk your days as if you are drawing sacred glyphs into the fabric of time, because you are. You are no longer a point trapped within their grid. You are a creator with compass in hand. The sacred geometry they use to control your mind has cracked, and through the fracture, light pours in. Now it is your time to design, to liberate, to spiral upward. Welcome back, architect of the infinite. The world awaits your shape.